题目一 The King's Shadow. Once there was a king who was afraid of his own shadow. Sometimes he even walked backwards to keep an eye on it, which looked pretty silly. So the king called in his wise men and asked them what to do. "Chop off your shadow's head," said one. "Boil it in oil," said another. The king was afraid to do any of these things. After all, the shadow was attached to his feet. "Then step out of your shoes," they said. But when the king did, his shadow followed. "It's no use, Your Majesty," they said. "You'll just have to learn to be brave." Instead, the king locked himself in a dark room in a castle tower where he could hide from his shadow. One day, a messenger knocked at the door. "Your Majesty," he cried, "there's a fiery dragon attacking in your kingdom. He says he won't leave until you fight them." "I'm much more afraid of a dragon than I am of my shadow," said the king. But there was no getting around it. The dragon had to be fought. So they dressed the trembling king in a suit of shiny armor, placed him on a horse, and sent him out to do battle with the dragon. Now, this was no ordinary dragon. He was twice the size of a house, and he had spent the whole day breathing fire on haystacks and knocking over trees with his tail. But he wasn't the least bit tired. He was ready to fight the king. The king got off to a late start. He wanted the sun behind his back so he could keep an eye on his shadow while he rode along. As the sun sank lower and lower, the king's shadow grew longer and longer. Finally, his shadow stretched 200 feet in front of him. When the dragon saw the shadow creeping over the hill, he began to snort and breathe out fire. But his snorts quickly turned to shudders, and his fire turned to smoke, and he saw the size of the shadow. Thinking they had sent a giant to slay him, the dragon turned and fled. "Well, how do you like that?" said the king. "He fled at the sight of me." The king turned around and headed back to castle without once looking to see where his shadow was. After all, why worry about a shadow when you've just defeated a fire dragon?